I'm Ann Charles.
I'm Linda Quinlan.
I'm Keith Ghostland. Today is Tuesday, September 11th. This is all things LGBTQ, and we are here to entertain and inform you. Right, Ann?
That is correct. My international headlines include the celebrations in India as the court legalizes gay sex. A clip from Venus, an Indo-Canadian film featuring a transgender principal figure. India's gay sex ban was a relic of the British Empire, as we know, but it's still in place in dozens of ex-colonies. A transgender Pakistani woman was burned alive. And I have a picture now of a transgender activist protesting that violence. South Korean protests. Grief in Zurich. Robbie Rapp, an activist of the underground organization Der Kreis, which means the circle, has died at 88. And I have a picture of him with his partner of 61 years, Ernst Ostertag. They were the first gay couple in Switzerland to register their partnership, and activists, vocal, outspoken activists in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Yangon's first LGBT cafe. The owner is Junior Dennis. He's pictured before you. Yangon is in Myanmar. It's the former Rangoon, Burma. A gay mayor gets Poland's left dreaming of change. Robert Biedron, the mayor of Slupsk, is pictured before you now. So those are some of my headlines and pictures.
Okay.
We live for the pictures.
That's right.
And the movie clip.
That's right.
And now on to national news. Well, we have National LGBT Journalist Group has its first leader of color, Sharif Durham, senior editor at CNN Digital, and he will serve a year term and is the 9th president of the Association of LGBTQ Journalists. So that's good. Billie Jean King slams U.S. umpire for sexist abuse of power. Trans woman was threatened in her home. The Collins Higgins Foundation's annual Youth Award has gone to a gay student who was forced to go to Kenya. Regina Wolf and Stephanie Gosk, both NBC lesbian couple. Miss Wolf is a news anchor for NBC Weekend Today program and is expecting her first child with her partner, NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk. Former Vatican official accuses the Pope of lying about not knowing the political situation with Kim Davis. She was, as we know, the clerk from Kentucky who refused a gay marriage license, a marriage license to a gay couple. Mark Bingham was one of the heroes who stormed the cockpit door in Flight 93 in the morning of September 11th. He was also a gay American, and he's a hero to the LGBT community. And Louisiana, it seems, has the highest rate of trans people being murdered. And a little bit of a talk about Bert Kavanaugh. We don't want to, but we will. So on to you.
I have something in reference
Right.
to Kavanaugh as well, other than Kamala Harris holding his speech.
I love that, but I have this whole thing about him. But anyway.
Well, I was going to say, what I have is, from Maine, Susan Collins. People are looking at she and McCloskey being the two swing votes. She got mailed 3,000 coat hangers.
I heard.
I saw that.
But there's also a group who is pledging to raise $360,000 or $1.3 million, depending on which source you're believing, to give to her opponent if she votes for Kavanaugh.
Good.
To which she said, this is bribery, and that is illegal. So it's the manner in which it was approached. So there's going to be much more on that.
Oh.
Kaya Morris, I have a little more detail on some of the incidents that were occurring in Bennington. And I'll tell you that part of my concern is that looking at her report of home invasion, graffiti, etc., that's not what the Bennington police are putting back out. So I'm a little concerned about the disconnect between what she encountered and what law enforcement thought they were investigating. Office of Attorney General, Chittenden County State's Attorney, Burlington Police Department, Vermont State Police have reopened the investigation of St. Joseph's Orphanage.
Yeah,
This
as
is
well they
based
need
on
to.
the BuzzFeed story, and we'll talk a little bit about the statute of limitations and some of the difficulties. And I'm actually going to give credit to Vermont's Catholic bishop, and I will give his quote later on. But what I want to put out to you at this point related to this story is Pennsylvania, their investigation, their report. The Catholic League in Pennsylvania, their statement is, oh, those priests weren't pedophiles. They were gay.
Oh, God.
Christine Hallquist, she's backed by every major labor union in the state, with the exception of the one that represents the employees of the organization for which she was the CEO. So, and there are 2 new HIV antivirals that are being made available. We'll talk a little bit about them because one of them is showing dramatically less side effects than some of the other antiretrovirals that have been available. Vermont Pride. Not going to talk a whole lot about it, but did you go? Zach's going to put up some pictures for you. But did you all notice that one of the sponsors was TD Bank, for which there is also a national boycott because of their financial support of climate change, the
Native American.
the Canadian tar sands,
Dakota
oil,
Access
the
Pipeline.
pipelines, not honoring the First Nation sacred rights. We might want to have a conversation about that at some point. Peace and Justice Center. Apparently there was a presentation that was entitled Female Erasure, based on the book by Germaine Greer and Ruth Barrett, and it's been canceled. I don't have a whole lot of details, just sort of that basic. But Anne is going to be interviewing Rachel Siegel on a future show, and we might
can ask
be
her.
asking some more questions, a little bit more about that AARP Maintaining Dignity Survey, and our trivia question. September 1990, front page of Out in the Mountains, featured a story about the Ledoux brothers. So what did the Ledoux brothers do that made it so memorable that they were a front page story? And then we have an interview with Greg, also maybe known as Jeff, from Momentum, which will come at the end of the show.
Okay.
So now back to you, Anne,
All right.
who's trying not to giggle.
Well, to follow up on the pictorial presentation of Pride in Burlington, I have a celebration of the repeal of Code 370, the penal code in India, the notorious 377. It was repealed, it was overturned, it criminalized homosexual sex. The Supreme Court issued this ruling, and I have 4 pictures before you of celebrants. The first group is from Calcutta, and the last 3 pictures are from Mumbai. I think that's the best way to show you what a big event this is. 1/5 of the world's LGBT population's X has been decriminalized through this repeal. So it's very exciting news.
And you can see the expression on their people's
Oh, I know it.
faces. I mean, they're so
Everybody's
excited. Yeah.
ecstatic.
Yeah.
Speaking of India, there's an Indo-Canadian film that we all need to watch for. It's called Venus, about with a transgender central point of interest. It's very interesting. It's a romantic comedy. The spoiler is there's a happy ending. It's about a young person transitioning from male to female whose son appears because he's seeking out his father, and his father is in transition, and it's a film that we all need to watch when we can find it. So take a look at the clip now, please.
Hey, kid! I've seen you following me around for the past couple of days.
You're Sid Gill?
Yeah?
You're my dad.
It's here again.
You dated my mom. Why did you guys break up?
That's complicated.
You're transgender?
Yeah.
That is so cool. Are you still Indian?
By this age, you should be married. You should have a family.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Ma. I have a son. Surprise!
Ralph, what kind of bakwas name is that? I will call you Rajinder. Are you hungry? His skin and bones. Look at him.
Who's this?
I'm his father. Mother, but I'm working that part out.
You have a boyfriend?
That's even more complicated.
You got the best deal. You got to skip the dirty diaper phase, the potty training, the temper tantrums. Skip straight ahead to a prepackaged teenager. That's just so nice.
What about your parents, Ralph? Don't they want to meet us?
Where the heck have you been? You have a girlfriend?
Are you crazy?
Do they know what's going on? You're picking up your kid? My girlfriend's. It's mine. This kid is manipulating us.
I think we need to have a talk. I'm out of this world. How else can I explain how strange I feel on this planet?
Can I ask you something? How come you guys never go out?
You tell me you want to be a woman, then you get angry when I accept you as a woman. I only have one child. Tell me what you want.
I want you to accept me as I am now.
What are you, huh?
He's not my dad.
This is important.
You think she doesn't understand you? She has been in your shoes. She always spoke her mind. Sound familiar?
No, and we take care of each other. I don't want to lose you.
I must have landed here from Venus.
I always imagined Sid with a woman, not as a woman.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Okay, is there any sense that Amazon Prime or Netflix or somebody might pick it up?
It's put out in 2018 by Compass Productions, and the trailer's available, but, you know, we saw the clip on Gay USA, too. Nobody seems to have any idea where it's going to be shown, but we've got to see it.
You got to ask
Keep
Andy
your
and
eyes
Andy.
peeled. Yeah. When India's Supreme Court legalized same-sex intercourse between consenting adults this week, it buried, most likely forever, a 157-year-old law introduced during British colonial rule. That's why everybody's celebrating. The decision was a landmark, not least because civil rights activists hope it will galvanize repeal of similar anti-gay legislation that remains on the books in dozens of other former outposts of the British Empire. Britain decriminalized homosexuality beginning half a century ago, but the vestiges of Victorian-era morality laws linger from Antigua to Zambia. About 35 members of the Commonwealth of Nations, made up mostly of former colonies, banned same-sex relations, accounting for roughly half the countries that outlaw gay intercourse. This year, British Prime Minister Theresa May said she deeply regretted the legacy of discrimination, violence, and even death left by the legislation, and pledged more than $7 million to support repeal efforts in Commonwealth countries. The harshest anti-gay laws in the world, including some carrying the death penalty, exist in the Middle East and weren't inherited from the British. But in many former colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, conservative political parties and religious groups have resisted efforts to repeal the old legislation. Here are some Commonwealth countries where the laws remain in force. Malaysia. Its law, like India's, is listed as Section 377 of the Penal Code and it bans intercourse against the order of nature. Conviction carries a punishment of 5 to 20 years in prison. And I'm sad to report that the caning of the 2 lesbians did occur in Malaysia last week. Oddly, caning is forbidden by Malaysian law, but approved by Muslim law. So they felt under Sharia law, this caning was appropriate. 100 audience members participated and cheered the authorities on. The president has said he opposed the caning because it runs counter to the compassion of Islam, but it still occurred. Okay, I have more countries to consider, but we'll do that in my next segment.
Okay. And we're going to go along to Billie Jean King. And King praised Serena Williams for standing up to tennis's double standard that unfairly punished women, and particularly women of color. The chair umpire, Carlos Ramos, gave Williams a code violation, accusing her of cheating by receiving hand signals from her coach during a match. And Ramos followed that up with a point penalty when Williams, frustrated, slammed her racket. Finally, he slapped Williams with a game penalty after she called him out for treating her differently than a male player. The incident prompted King, a prominent lesbian athlete, to tweet in support of Williams. So I totally agree with her on that issue.
She called him a thief, and look at John McEnroe and all those
that's
male
right.
tennis players who act out all over the court.
And none of them have ever been fined.
No.
Ilie Nastase in Australia was at one point, but he was so over the top.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that was 70s, 80s maybe. So.
Yeah, it's just, and you know, she's been really given a hard time. Too many hormone tests, and I mean, it's just outrageous.
She's a strong, powerful woman of color who makes no apologies.
Right, and of course, certain people don't like that, as we know. And then there are trans women who were threatened in their home, and their neighbors rally to their defense. Liz Abel and her wife, Alicia, live in Newbury, Florida. At first, someone left anonymous note on their door saying move or die. Then the police knocked on their door one day and said, "Do you know what's written on your garage?" And they said, "No, we have no idea." And someone had written, "Die, tranny, fuck," in spray paint. Liz says she was surprised by the support she got from her neighbors. They brought food, offered to repaint the garage, and buy the couple a sensor light and camera. So, but they have not apprehended the people who did this. When a 30-year relationship ended, an Olympian swimmer at 14, Carolyn Weed, laced up her boots and traveled and let me see if I have this right, Caminoti de Santiago. That's that long march through, that a lot of people take for...
Through Latin America?
Yeah, no.
Camino.
No, through Spain and France and...
Camino.
Yeah,
for
Camino,
spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah, for spiritual enlightenment, anyway. But she has a new memoir, which traces LGBTQ history through her lived experiences. She came out in the 60s when living in Portland, Oregon. Her book, Tough Girl, is her journey with Rose, which was her ex of 30 years, motherhood, and the end of her relationship. She walked the 300 miles at the age of 65.
Good for her.
So good for her.
And then wrote a book about it.
That's right. Mississippi governor urges SCOTUS to rule against transgender hiring protections. Phil Bryant joins 18 other Republican leaders in petitioning SCOTUS to rule that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does not protect trans people. So, And so I think we'll go on to the local,
And
regional
Really?
news. Yes.
We're going to go to Bennington for just a minute. Kaya Morris, the representative who has withdrawn from seeking re-election. More details on exactly what she and her family had been experiencing since 2016 in particular is when it was increased. Oh my, does that date stand out for any reason? Online harassment. Propaganda left under the door and then under the door of the Democratic Party headquarters. Home invasion. Vandalism, graffiti, and there was a recount of going out for a walk, and here was swastikas painted on the trees along the trail. And the report that came back from the chief of police in Bennington made it seem as though they were merely nuisance events. This all sounds more than just nuisance to me, so I'm kind of concerned about what is the disconnect. And sort of related, and we reported on this during the last show, Christine Holquist's campaign has received more hate mail threats and some death threats directed toward Christine. The Vermont Democratic Party says that they're averaging at least 5 or more hate-motivated calls per day related to Christine's campaign and Vermont's progressive agenda. So, St. Joseph's Orphanage. They're reopening the investigation. T.J. Donovan, who is our Attorney General, has said that he is going to go back and really look at what it is that has happened. And one of the things to keep in mind is that Vermont statutes allow up to 6 years after a victim realizes that they have been abused and it caused personal harm to file suit. So that, if I repress all of these memories until I'm 18, but the event happened at 6, it would be 6 years forward from my 18th year that I would still be able to file. However, there's a 40-year statute of limitation on childhood sex abuse. And St. Joseph's Orphanage closed in 1974. So statute of limitations is kind of running out. And also, how many of the perpetrators
Are still
around? But to that point, T.J. Donovan made this comment. Justice doesn't always occur in a courtroom. Justice oftentimes means that the perpetrators and those that present the perpetrators acknowledge that what is alleged is to have occurred, and the victims are given an acknowledgement, an apology, and an opportunity to share their stories.
And I heard on NPR that there was I think she was 83-year-old woman who was in that orphanage who had been talking about that abuse for a long time, and no one listened to her. And
Well, keep in mind when we reported on Pennsylvania, the church deliberately tried to get parishioners to delay reporting so statutes of limitations could run out. Catholic Bishop Christopher Coyne did an unprecedented Sunday press conference to say enough with this statement. As ministers of Jesus seeking to imitate the Good Shepherd, we know how actions speak louder than words is even truer today than it was in the past. It is not enough to apologize. If we mean what we say, we must be prepared to act, and we are. And he has said that he will hand over any documentation that he has in his possession to assist in this investigation. And of note, in 2002 was the last time, and it was under Bill Sorrell, where they investigated charges of abuse by priests in Vermont, and a great number of those records have already been turned over to the Office of the Attorney General. So.
Okay. On to you.
All right, let's go to Singapore. I'm still
From Burlington to Singapore.
I'm still considering ex-colonies in their relationship to same-sex marriage. In Singapore, same-sex intercourse remains a crime. although the government has pledged not to harass gays. For the last decade, they've had the Pink Dot rally, drawing thousands of revelers. This is an authoritarian city-state, Singapore, where public gatherings are rare. Foreigners were, as I reported at the time, foreigners were banned from going to the rally last year, but the government told international companies like Facebook, Goldman Sachs, and Google that they couldn't sponsor it, but local people stepped up. Dozens of Singaporean companies sponsored the festivities, and so there is, the Singapore's law minister said the growing number of citizens were in favor of decriminalizing homosexuality, but the majority still oppose the change. In fact, 55% of the population don't want to decriminalize homosexuality. Now, Brunei, another ex-colony, in Brunei, homosexuality has long been a criminal offense. It's an oil-rich sultanate in the Southeast Asian island of Borneo. In 2014, as part of an increasingly conservative turn under the long-ruling sultan, Brunei introduced a new Islamic legal code that allows for the punishment of stoning to death for a variety of offenses, including homosexuality. Human Rights Watch has denounced it as medieval punishment. And you may recall that the Beverly Hilton's Hotel is owned by the Sultan of Brunei, and several Hollywood celebrities, including Ellen DeGeneres and Jay Leno, said they will boycott the Beverly Hills Hotel for that reason. Malawi, authorities in this southern African nation in 2012 said they would no longer enforce laws against same-sex intercourse, but occasional arrests have still been reported. In April, police in the northern city of Mzuzu arrested a 24-year-old man on suspicion that he is gay, even though being gay is not a crime. So mixed results in Malawi. Uganda, we've talked about. Authorities rarely persecute Ugandans under the anti-gay statute, but have often used it as a cover-up to clamp down on LGBT-related events. And we talked about police shutting down Queer Kampala International Film Festival and other events. President Museveni says of Uganda, "You cannot stand up here and say I'm a homosexual. People will not like it." Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta has made similarly homophobic comments, telling CNN recently that gay rights were of no importance to people in Kenya. The justice system has been more receptive. A case challenging the gay sex ban was heard in court this year, with a decision expected soon. Also this year, an appeals court outlawed the police practice of conducting rectal examinations on male prisoners suspected of engaging in homosexual sex. Last place on my map is the Caribbean. In 1991, the Bahamas became the first former British colony in the Americas to strike down the anti-sodomy law, but 25 years would pass before the Central American nation of Belize became the next. This year, as I reported, a court in Trinidad and Tobago ruled that its British-era laws prohibiting buggery and indecency were unconstitutional. In 7 former island colonies in the Eastern Caribbean, including Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, and Grenada, similar laws remain in force. According to Human Rights Watch, while few people have faced criminal prosecutions, the laws give social and legal sanction for discrimination, violence, stigma, prejudice against LGBT individuals. The Trinidad ruling, which found that all citizens were entitled to the same constitutional rights, could reverberate in other Caribbean nations with similar statutes, it is hoped. So that's my rundown of British ex-colonies.
I'm sure there are many more.
There are, that's just a smattering.
Okay. And speaking of Kenya, the Collins Higgins Foundation's annual Youth Award has gone to a gay student who was forced to go to Kenya for conversion therapy camp. Apparently he made it out, and his mother took him there, and he wasn't out to his parents, so he doesn't know how they knew he was gay, although, you know, I don't know. So anyway, he got this $10,000 from this foundation, and he's a student in New York City, so we wish him well there. And Brett Kavanaugh, I don't really want to talk about him, but no one else does either, so the only thing I want to say is that Lambda Legal has filed 8 separate Freedom of Information Act requests demanding documents and records of any correspondence related to Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the role he played in promoting or approving anti-LGBTQ policies pushed the George W. Bush White House, that he might have pushed in the George W. Bush White House. Kavanaugh, who served as White House staff secretary from 2003 to 2006, was nominated last month, as we know, by President Trump to fill that seat of Kennedy's. He referred to at the time as the White House as the most instructive years in his professional development, prompting Democrats to question what decision he had involved in the policies he promoted in that position. As we know, a lot of anti-LGBTQ policies were enforced during the George W. Bush administration. And so I don't know if they'll actually get access to these or it'll be too late. But
well, I have a question for our panelists. Do you think these perjury charges
will stick?
Have legs? No? I was
Well,
sort of
and
pinning my hopes on that.
Well, I was going to say Patrick's whole bent has been he's lied during his testimony.
Right.
But Congress has never gone after someone for perjury. It is unprecedented.
Really?
So.
But it could happen?
Well, I mean, because some of the conversation was about 45 Jr. and some of the other people who have already pled guilty under the Mueller investigation. Was Congress going to file perjury charges against them, and it hasn't happened.
No.
So.
And they wanted to know, like, did he help Bush administration to push the amendment to the U.S. Constitution to ban same-sex marriage? The administration's effort to promote such an amendment by using taxpayer dollars to pay for anti-gay marriage, the administration's effort to promote such an amendment by using taxpayer dollars. So I guess there's a lot of oppose the version of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd ban, oppose the earlier version of, so I mean there's a lot of stuff there possibly, so it'll be interesting to see if they can actually get their hands on it.
We're about to live through challenging times.
Yes.
I hope so. I hope it doesn't get that far. But.
Very challenging times.
She's looking right at me.
Yes, it's your turn.
There are 2 new HIV antiretrovirals that have been approved by the FDA. One is Delstrigo. I love their names they come up with. I don't know how they do them. And the other is Pyfeltro. Say that 3 times real fast.
Pyfeltro.
Double-blind clinical trials, 80% effective in the suppression of HIV. And the Delstrigo in particular has less side effects than some of the other antiretrovirals that are available on the market, such as you're not experiencing the same degree of dizziness, sleep difficulties, lack of concentration. Yeah, just what we need, right? And one of the benefits they found is that it actually decreases your cholesterol level.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's handy.
What a combo.
But it may make a hepatitis B infection worse. So that's sort of balancing. And there is an event coming up in the near future sponsored by the National Association of Social Workers, the Vermont chapter, and it's the week of September 24th. They are going to do 3 presentations, one in St. Johnsbury, one in Rutland, one in Montpelier, about working with LGBTQ youth. And Amanda from Outright is going to be the main presenter. And they put out some interesting statistics. 40% of the homeless youth population are LGBTQ, 40%. 50% of youth in the juvenile justice system are LGBTQ.
Oh, I didn't know that. I figured the homeless, but I didn't know that.
20% of youth in foster care are LGBTQ youth, which means that looking at Vermont's 2016 statistics, where there were 1,342 youth in DCF custody, there might be as many as 250 LGBTQ youth in LGBTQ custody. So we have an interview now with Greg Tefft, and smiling at me, from Momentum. Hello, and our guest for this week is Greg Tefft, representing Momentum. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Keith.
Yes. I'm so glad you could make it.
Yeah.
I understand that you were offered up by Art and Wayne because they say they're shy.
Right, I see. Hard to believe, but that's what
we will get to them
yes,
later.
We'll get to them, yes.
Actually, I was very glad that you would agree to come on because, to be very honest, I know very little about Momentum, who you are, what you do, even though Ann and Linda tells me I should be very acquainted with your services. So if we could start with, how long has Momentum been around?
I'm not sure of the exact, for quite a few years.
Okay.
I've been Momentum coordinator for a little over a year.
Okay. Were you one of the founders?
I think about 4 years Momentum's been around.
You're getting signals from the audience,
right,
aren't you?
I am. So.
And we're thankful they're here.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Were you one of the founders?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it had been established by another group of people.
Right.
You came to be part of it.
Yes. Yeah. I joined it soon after, coming to being in Vermont or becoming affiliated with the Pride Center.
Okay.
And then the previous coordinator stepped down, and I was offered the position. And
you got volunteered
Yes, I got volunteered in.
Okay, so what is the mission of Momentum, or what is the service that you all are hoping to provide?
Momentum is basically a group for 40, 45, and older. So we try to get to that group because glam, there's several.
I was going to say you're the balance to glam.
Right, the balance to glam. Glam is the younger folks, and we're the older folks. So that's where we target. So yes.
Okay, there's also Rainbow Umbrella, which is a group in Central Vermont, and Out in 802. How does Momentum differ from those two organizations? Because I've noticed at times that the 3 organizations have sponsored events together.
Right. So we do sponsor events together. I would say just more of trying to get with an older clientele that Momentum is. And
seniors, vintage
seniors,
group.
Right. And it's a nice group when we can get Rainbow Umbrella and folks from a lot of Momentum members are also part of the Out in the 802. So it's nice. We just try to get information and information out to the most people. So many times we cross-post things on Facebook and word of mouth, so that helps.
Linda's been heralding your virtues for quite a while. So.
Yeah, thank you.
So 45 and older, and it's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, is the whole spectrum of our communities?
Yes. Yeah, whole spectrum.
So what are the types of activities that you offer? Why would I become a member of Momentum?
We try to do, we've done some social, we call them we do a Wednesday hump time get together at Arts Riot. And that's
every Wednesday?
No, we post it. So I try to do an event 1 or 2 times a month.
Okay.
And sometimes we join up with Rainbow Umbrella, or more with Rainbow Umbrella, because Out in AO2, the members are already in both. So A lot of the members are already
Okay.
in both. So we do that social time. We've done Fleming Museum tours. We're trying to line up maybe a bowling time in the future. So
Bowling, that sounds familiar.
yes,
Okay.
right, to the Rainbow
The next
Umbrella
thing
group.
you know, you're going to be having a book discussion group.
Yes, I thought right, yeah. Right. But the social times are well attended, and again, just trying to get the most community members out there. So,
So you're the coordinator,
Yep.
and you put the notice out. How does the organization decide on the event itself? Does it come from within the membership? Is there a
within the
core
membership,
group, or-
and myself and Wayne Wayne usually has some good feedback and
And you
comments, of course.
And you trust him?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but but he has good feedback, and so trying to think. But the Arts Ride, we've done the food trucks on Friday, the Fleming Museum, so many different events. But I also advertise the out in the 802 does the Sunday brunches.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of these cross references. So.
Are there any of those events that seem to be better attended than others? Have you had greater success with any specific type of event?
The Wednesday hump days at Arts Ride sometimes
Really?
get around 15 folks.
Okay.
But it's hard, getting different numbers of people to come to events. Everybody has a busy work schedule and things like that. So, but
Okay. In some of our conversations with other organizations, we've asked them about, okay, how do you reach out to specific communities? Like, how do you reach out to the women's community to see what it is that they would like to do, or the transgender community, or the bisexual community?
Right.
Is it just there's an open invitation, please give us your ideas, or is there a deliberate outreach?
I would like to try to have more deliberate outreach, but usually
Okay.
it's word of mouth.
Okay.
But I'm really connected with the Pride Center and actually work, so I receive a lot of information from, Mike and Rex and Katarina and, so many different people there, Taylor and Travis and Tyler, Skylar, sorry. So we get lots of good
Names
information.
is one of those things.
Right. And we've had a
I
fair
know.
amount of turnover in the last month or so too. So.
And you can also look at what are the events that seem to have a greater representation of people attending than
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
So you've referenced the Pride Center a number of times.
Mhm.
What's the relationship between Momentum and the Pride Center? Is Momentum a program of the
Momentum
Pride
is actually
Center?
a program of the Pride Center.
Okay.
Right.
So Momentum is
Like
their,
LAM and many
their
of the other
seniors
Right.
project.
Right.
Okay.
So it's connected with the Pride Center. So, so we have a Facebook page that members. It's set up. It's fairly public. People can sign into the Momentum Facebook page and ask to join, and then I'm one of the folks that can approve, and so can Mike Bensel, Mike, and so there's a few of us that can approve people to, I believe we're right around 175 members to Momentum.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So again, it's hard to get much beyond 25 at certain events, but with that number, but.
From having done organizing, I'm impressed that you
Okay.
got 25.
Yeah, just, but many times we get different individuals, which is really great. So then I also have an email list, and that's got about 151 folks on it. So I have an email list that I send out as well.
And that's, to get in touch with you would be Greg at pridecentervermont.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, you can contact the Pride Center if you have any questions on that. So.
There's been, and one of the stories that I'm going to be reporting on for this show is an AARP survey that was done called Maintaining Dignity, which is about LGBTQ seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking at services and advocacy, et cetera. Has Momentum given thought to extending beyond merely creating social events to looking at having an advocacy component? I mean, one of the things that Linda and I have talked about is, we have no idea how many members of our communities are in long-term care facilities.
Right.
And who's going in just, to visit. to do advocacy to ensure that their rights are being upheld. Is that something Momentum might consider?
Yes, for sure. It's definitely, and it's like
since we might be needing them any moment now, right?
Right, right. Art and I had Art Hall and I just had a long conversation at the festival about just about that, because it's a concern, and so sometimes we've heard from a few folks that are mobility is an issue to get to some of the events, so we've reached out to them, but we've still had trouble getting them there.
Transportation.
I've emailed, and the daughter of one individual, said I can bring him, but she has not brought him to any events yet. So, but
I can bring him, but then he's your custody. You need to get him back home.
Yeah, but Art and I have talked about that, and then. I spend a fair amount of the winter in Fort Lauderdale, and the Fort Lauderdale Pride Center has, that's a big component down there.
Public transportation.
So I want to actually, this year when I go down, I'm going to actually research, even the housing for older LGBTQ folks, and so I want to talk to them about, rather than reinventing the wheel, start talking to them about how they do.
Because I want to spend my golden years with, my queer brothers and sisters, and
such a larger facility down there. That's one of
they have a stronger infrastructure, more resources.
Yes. And met a lot of full-time paid staff, and I think they're trying to actually build a small building that will house elderly LGBTQ folks, right?
Small building?
So, yeah.
We want something large.
Right.
We want gardens.
Right.
We want swimming
Especially in
pools.
Florida, you could have all those nice things. But yeah.
So, does Momentum have any event that's coming up in the near future for which I should be looking at attending?
Right. Well, actually, September 27th, I think we're actually pairing with Rainbow Umbrella at the Zen Barn in Waterbury. So, and right.
That's a dinner out?
Yes, drinks and dinner out. A big part of most of our social gatherings is having a beverage.
Okay.
So my partner's signaling beverages over
there, smiling.
Right, smiling that. So that's been a good part. But that's one that's coming up. Yeah, now, September 27th, and then I post it. I usually about a week out. I post it on Facebook. I don't like to post too soon because it gets buried in people's feeds.
You don't want to peak too early.
Right, exactly.
But since it's a dinner out at a restaurant, I'm going to take it that you really would like to be able to make reservations in advance.
Right.
So the restaurant knows how many people. My just showing up at the door may not be a welcome sight.
Exactly. The beauty of the Facebook is people put down whether they're going or not, and that gives me at least an idea. Where when I put it out on email, I'm not so sure I get a decent head count. Some people will email me back, which is wonderful because then I can add that to the head count. And even at Art's Right, it's so nice to know whether we're doing a table for 8, 10, 12, just to try to get.
Reserve your space.
Yes, right, for their logistics.
Claim your area.
Right, for their logistics.
This is us.
Yes, yeah.
To make sure it's properly decorated.
Right. If I may, I would like to put out there a couple other gatherings that seem to be happening that are on the 802.
That's why you're invited here.
It's every first and third Thursday of the month, first and third Thursday of the month, we meet at Lincoln's Speakeasy in Burlington. And it's Lincoln's is right off of Church Street. It's the old style speakeasy. It has a door, no markings, there's no advertising. You go in, you push a wooden thing and the door magically
Fernando's
opens.
Hideaway comes to mind.
Right, yes, right. But that has been well attended. Usually a group of 20, 25, and sometimes we've had 45
And that's an event for which I can just show up.
Right, just show up. It's 5:30 to 7:30, and you can just show up. And true, the beauty in that is if you think you're going, you can't, or you want to go, there's plenty of room there. It is cash only, but it's very reasonable. It's $5, and it's cash only, so that you need to plan ahead.
People still carry cash?
Well, that's right. You have to for the Lincolns. Right.
I'll keep that in mind.
And
now, does Momentum have any routine meetings that they sponsor as well? Or is Momentum just totally events that are sponsored?
Momentum at this point is more events.
Okay.
We do the Arts Right. And actually, when you mentioned earlier, we did do an AARP event at the Pride Center, and that was posted. And we had the, I guess, the head person from Vermont came and spoke to us about retirement options and many different things. And that was well attended. It was nice.
Okay, so you give me the hook as we're down to less than our
Right.
last minute. We will invite you back because I'd like to talk to you about your experience with the AARP.
Okay.
Because I've heard mixed reviews.
All right.
But with that,
yes, Kate.
Thank you for spending
And I would
this
also
time
like
with
to
us.
talk a little bit more about how we can reach out to some of the other groups in other parts of the state, which would be another whole discussion, which...
that's a larger discussion,
right.
not just for the seniors community, but our
Right.
communities
Yes.
at large.
Yes.
So,
So good.
All right. We're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Keith.
That was really nice. It's
For-
good to get that information out there.
For us old folks.
Yeah.
So, the trivia question. Well, and there's an addendum to the trivia question, and it's who might be celebrating their 36th anniversary? Perhaps Ann Charles and Linda Quinlan?
Hey.
Cards and gifts will be accepted.
Yes.
So the other trivia question, September 1990, out in the mountains, front page featured the Ledoux brothers.
What year?
1990. The Ledoux brothers.
What did they do?
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't resist.
There's no stopping her. She's irrepressible. They may have been one of the first hate crime cases in Vermont. They may have done assault and attempted robbery of someone coming out of Pearls, which at the time was the only lesbian and gay bar in the state. They may have approached this person saying, "So are you a faggot or what?" The attempted robbery was because the person kept trying to say, "I have no money, I have no wallet," didn't listen to it. Their defense, well,
He didn't have any money.
no, their defense was, well, he made a sexual advance towards us. I don't think so. And I bring this up again because in the current climate,
It's a
looking at
Twinkie defense again, yeah.
the gay panic defense. I bring it up again because looking at what is happening throughout Vermont, we should be attentive to the increase in hate language and looking at, is the increase in hate language indicative of the potential for hate rate motivated violence? And people need to be attentive and report.
Well, have you thought about, like, for instance, what you would do if you were, say, on the train or the bus and someone was being harassed and,
In the sexual violence area, there is a training called the bystander training. I mean, if you think about, all of the messages we put out about domestic and sexual violence, get help, seek assistance, but we never gave bystanders permission to act. And that's what that training does.
And is that kind of to distract them or to walk up to the person and kind of intervene, or?
So it's a direct confrontation. If I were seeing you sort of coercing Anne, I would step in and say, "You can't do that. You need to stop."
But what
or
if
I
it was
would
a
get Anne away.
dangerous situation and you weren't in the position to call the police or something? I'm just wondering, I often wonder, there's some people who do some very heroic things that I've read about, on trains and different places.
I was reading an account recently, a first-person account by a man of color who got on the subway, and this cisgender white woman started screaming racial slurs at him, and it was a packed subway, and
he couldn't get away.
He couldn't get away, and he kept trying to read his, he was shaking, but he just kept writing. I think it was a legal brief he was trying to read, and a white seated man said, "Leave him alone," and she just kept it up. And so the passengers on the train arranged for him to sit away from the person who
so
was
he
screaming.
could move
Yeah,
somewhere
Well,
else.
move so he could move, and then, gave him a seat.
It's like the de-escalation
Yeah.
training that was
Right.
provided to Christine Hultquist's staff. How do you distract? How do you de-escalate? How do you say things? Sort of. I understand you're upset, but we'll try and. So there are techniques. I mean, but it is not one of the things that within our community that we train ourselves on relative to self-protection and self-defense.
Yeah.
And he was saying, whatever I do, I'm in danger of being accused of being a predator, an angry black man, or, I mean, he was really in a tough spot.
But fortunately, a few people came to his aid and
Yeah.
at least intervened and moved him out of that situation.
I was going to say, I
So-
liked what you relayed of the people who were on the train positioned themselves so they were between the two of them. There wasn't the visual contact.
And she couldn't accuse him
he
of
was
touching her,
Absolutely.
which is
Right.
what she was saying, stop touching me, stop touching me. He wasn't touching her.
What you
So-
didn't have in your stories, and really quickly because
Yeah.
we're running out of time, Alex Jones and Cruz, did you see the story about the interchange in the Senate?
Tell us.
No.
Jones was there and sort of pushing at Cruz and, why are
Ted
you
Cruz,
not...
we're speaking of.
Yes.
Ted Cruz, I'm sorry.
I thought you meant Tom Cruise for a minute. I've got the
No, C-R-U-Z. No.
Okay.
But Jones was saying, where are you about protecting my rights as a conservative commentator, with the Facebook and the tweets? And Jones reached over and touched Cruz, and Cruz said, "Don't touch me, man." And, get away from me. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're talking about. And Jones called Cruz gay as Cruz was trying to get away from him.
No, I missed that story.
Oh, I'm going to have to send it
and
to you.
I don't even know who Alex Cruz is. I see he's been
Alex
banned
Jones.
from Alex Jones. Sorry,
The
I don't
commentator.
know him either.
Yeah.
No.
But on that,
All right, on
we'll
that
be
note
doing
of
some Google
confusion-
searches.
Uh-huh.
We thank you for spending this time with us because we've had a really good time.
And we've informed each other.
Yes, so,
We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
and resist.
Resist.
Susan Collins, let's have a chat.
Senator, I have called you, I have emailed, I have written letters.
Day after day, week after week. It has been pretty demoralizing to know that your elected representative is ignoring you.
So we're trying something new and hope that this will get your attention. Senator Collins, if you vote for Brett Kavanaugh, we're going to fund your future opponent.
A vote for Kavanaugh is almost certainly a vote to reverse Roe versus Wade.
As a Mainer who has a pre-existing condition, if you vote yes on Kavanaugh, you're voting to kill me.
If he was confirmed to the Supreme Court, he could instantly take away rights for people like me as a non-binary person, or people of nearly any marginalized identity.
If you vote to confirm Kavanaugh, we're not going to stop fighting until you're defeated.
Mainers need you to stand up and be a hero.
Be a hero.
Be a hero.
Be a hero and vote no. And if you don't, we will replace you.